Good morning, everyone. It's really what a blessing to get to be here this morning with all of you. Just like to offer, to begin with, a little bit of gratitude for everyone who was here last night, just putting on a wonderful gathering. And just, Zach and I just got home on Friday night and got to jump right into Saturday, and just so sweet for us to get to come back and to feel the spirit of everyone here just serving together and serving each other and serving others. And we had a lot of fun last night, so thank you all for such a special evening. So our topic today is, how shall we meet our tests? And like the reading said, we're going to have them. And I think we all, from our own experience, know that we have tests coming to us and challenges. Even like the reading said, sometimes often and sometimes here and there. But I think if we all reflect, we know we have them. And I was remembering little Hailey when I was a kid, and I was pretty sensitive. And I would say when I was a child, life was not easy for me, and the tests were coming often. And I was oftentimes retreating into my room, basically feeling bad for myself and just not wanting to deal with everything that was coming to me. And my mom would come in and she would say, okay, you can sit in here and choose to be unhappy, or you can come out there and enjoy life, and you can choose to be happy. And I was just reflecting on that and thinking, how true it is, and how much that was actually the voice of Divine Mother saying, you do have the choice right now. And your choice really is, do you want to turn to me and to expand beyond these confines that you're putting around yourself and these limitations, saying, no, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this, or I would rather this instead? Or do you want to just give yourself into my presence and to trust that what I'm giving to you is exactly what you need right now, and to go out there and embrace it? And, that's really the choice that we do have. We're going to have things come to us, and it's going to be different for each one of us. My tests aren't going to look like your tests. It's just going to be all so unique and individual. But if we can remember that we're not in charge, that there is a plan for our lives, and everything that comes to us is actually to help us, especially when we've kind of signed up for the spiritual path, especially when we've, I think it's true regardless, but when we've made that conscious choice that I want to expand in myself, I want to grow into God and, find realization of God in myself, then, God hears that and says, okay, well, I want to help you to do that, but there's a lot of layers of ego around your true essence of who you really are. And if you really want to uncover who we really are, we're going to have to peel those layers away. And so our tests are given to us to help us to do that, to help us to expand beyond those confines that we've, just built around ourselves over lifetimes. And so, our affirmation today is alertness, and how easy it is when something comes to just become the victim and to say, this is happening to me, and not even realize it, to just not be aware that we fall into our moods, that we fall into our reactions, but that sense of alertness to just always see everything as coming from God, and to know that, okay, this is what I'm being given right now, even though it might be a little bit hard and I have to sort of deal with this right now, but to just have that faith and that knowing that, God actually very specifically chose this exact circumstance and gave it to me right now as this little gift to help me. Not always easy to do, but how special if we can remember to do that. And, that's really the choice we have. It can actually be quite simple. Do we want to expand and accept what's being given to us, and to choose love, to choose joy, to choose to embrace others, to choose to serve others? Or do we just run into our room and retreat and, waller? And sometimes we need to do that too, but hopefully when we do that, we actually get to be still and tune into God and ask, What is it that you're trying to teach me right now? What is it that you want me to do? How can I expand into this? Because it's not always obvious, even when we're faced with something, what we should do. You know, Zach and I have just had the immense, true blessing to go back to the mountains where we found our inspiration to come here and to start this farm. And it was, you know, so special for us to, after 10 years, to go back to the mountains. And, you know, we had a couple teachers that we met in the mountains. One of them just passed away, and he, you know, in a sense was the catalyst for our extraction from the center of the farm this summer. And we had a really blessed time to get to go and be with our friend Roy. And then, you know, through that experience, we were drawn to go back to another teacher we met in the mountains, this mountain sage, Doug. And, you know, we go back and we booked a campsite in this campground where we, you know, the area we knew he lived in. And we didn't really know when we were going to see him, but we knew we'd find him. We were pretty sure of that. And we pulled into the campground, and he's standing right there to greet us. He hasn't been the camp host at that campground for 10 years, but he just happened to be in the camp host spot while the, you know, the current camp host was out riding horses, and he was there to receive us. And it was just, you know, what a gift that was. And, you know, it was really special to get to be in his presence and to be with him again. And, you know, we were actually able to see that he's going through some tests right now. And, you know, some interesting things are happening that I don't need to get into, but basically he's in himself questioning, what am I supposed to do right now? He's been in the same area for 17 years, summers and winters, up in the high Sierras, and it just feels like he belongs there, but there's a part of him, because of what's happening around him, that's questioning, am I supposed to be here? Is something supposed to change? And, you know, one thing he said to us over and over, he said, well, you know, in my life, change has always been good. Change has always been good. And just, you know, when he said it, you could just feel he wasn't afraid of what might be coming, you know, even though he loves his home, and he wasn't attached to how it was going to turn out. But we could see, and he was very open with us, that he was kind of struggling with, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, this has been where he's been. It's been so clear. This was his mission. And he was just saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. Every time we would see him almost, he would share with us, I just don't know what's going to happen. And then one morning, we would have, just almost every morning we were there, we would have satsang with him in the hot springs at about 5 a.m. He got there a little bit earlier when the stars were totally out. We would get there when they were starting to fade a little bit. And one morning he said to us, I plugged some holes last night. I had some holes that were leaking hope, and I've started to plug them. And it was just, you know, you could really feel, and maybe Zach may or may not share the rest of the story, but, you know, that's, again, the choice we have is, you know, the little holes that we have that are leaking out our hope, leaking out our faith, leaking out our love, is to just tune into God and say, God, help me plug these holes, and let me live with you in every moment, with anything that comes.
I didn't know if you were going to leave anything for me. Yeah, I just want to take one step back, and a conversation I've been having a lot with people, and that I was having yesterday at the farm supper, was kind of a natural curiosity, and one person, a good friend of mine, used the word skepticism, about what it is to be in a place like this and how it can actually work. And it's been very interesting for us to be extracted, like Hailey said, from the center of it this year, and be able to kind of look at it with fresh eyes at and see everyone and what's happening with each person here. Maybe not from telling them what to do each day, like our relationship had been, but more as just their friend who's watching them grow. And there's a really interesting thing that I found myself communicating with people when they ask, how does this work? You know, if intentional communities were just easy, I imagine the whole earth would be covered in them. So how does it work? And I think everybody here is kind of trying to figure this out from within. Because if you ask anybody, they will tell you that it's real, and it's real in both directions. That to be a part of something like this, we use the word brotherhood colony, or I would say spiritual village. The idea that we're kind of meeting all of our basic needs through our efforts together, but also that we're doing this from a spiritual place. Because what happens is if we approach doing something like this and integrating our lives with each other, with God, if we approach this with our egos, what do you think happens? It gets ugly fast. And I think we've all experienced that because there's some little ego in each one of us. But when we start to spiritualize our life and we start to realize that each person has been given to me with a purpose from God, and that each circumstance that's coming to me has a divine purpose, boy, does that change things. It's a lot harder to just blame that person and say, the heck's the matter with that guy? And suddenly we start looking within and we start saying, God, why is this happening to me again? What am I doing in this circumstance? What karma of my own needs to be purified? And in this we start to see that a place like this, not that it's just here, this consciousness of community, of brotherhood, of seeing everyone as a channel for God to work with us. When we bring that consciousness into everything, it works on us and it expedites our spiritual growth. And that's what I've seen in the people here this summer, is that you got to take responsibility for being here, you got to step up and own it and believe in this from within your own self. It can't come from anyone else. And when we make those choices, it's amazing. We get challenged. It gets tough. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we're mad. But we keep that little thread of faith. We hang on to that thing. And gradually we start to see, oh, that's what that was for. That's why I had to go through that. And suddenly it happens again and we're not affected in the same way. There's a little part of us that is able to see the big picture. I'm no longer looking through these eyes. I'm seeing the big picture. And this is the path of consciousness. This is how we grow. You know, we all are stuck in these bodies to an extent, and it sucks. We all hate that, I think, except to the extent that we're really attached to it. And we really kind of like it, don't we? That part is really terrible. But there's a part of us that knows that's not the truth. That's not the highest aspect of who we are. We are consciousness. And when our consciousness expands, suddenly I see the world through his eyes. Suddenly I see through someone else's perspective. And when we start to do this, that's called spiritually maturing. I'm no longer just seeing the lens through what I want. I'm seeing the lens through the universal consciousness of life and what is trying to happen. You know, at Ananda, we've been blessed with a few little simple mantras that can take you a long way if you just learn to use them. And one of them, and I've had the great blessing to share this with a few people in the last month in our travels, we meet random people that sometimes they just find us, and it's like shocking to me. One day we were sitting on the bank of the river at Mono Hot Springs, and these two guys just start swimming across the river, like tromping and just making a scene, and they just pull up right next to us. And they're both from New York City. And they need to hear from us. Like, I've never met these people. I don't know these people. They're from New York. They're kind of New Yorky. And God bless them. They're really open, though. And I found that next thing I know, I'm talking to them about what is trying to happen. What's trying to happen? Impersonalize our lives. This thing is not about us. It's about what's trying to happen in the universal sense. Any circumstance that's happening, let's ask ourselves, what is going on here? What is the divine plan in this situation? And the other mantra I want to just make sure we mention is so simple, and it's say yes to life. When we have this attitude of just saying yes to the things that are coming to us, it's absolutely amazing how everything shifts. The details, secondary. They'll figure themselves out. We just have to say yes to the right things, to tune in from within ourselves and know that whatever is coming to us is from God. And if we do our part and we have willingness, enthusiasm, alertness, that was such a good affirmation, then all the right things are going to happen. This is true faith, is that when we actually go through this process enough times and we get to the other side, we start to realize, wow, it's all going to be okay. Everything that I need is going to come to me. It's all going to work. I just have to say yes. I have to be willing to do the little things each day. And that's another thing that I've seen in all the people who are here when we just abandoned them, is the willingness to say yes in the little moments when nobody's watching, when nobody knows what you're doing but God. You know a way to really know where you're at on the spiritual path? What do you do when you get by yourself? Ask yourself that question. What do I do when I'm alone? Do I just start scrolling? You know, I think we learn a lot about ourselves when nobody's there to watch. But it's the little moments on the spiritual path that make it what it is. It's the little steps. And suddenly we take a little step, we fall over and we crawl a little bit further. We just take our steps all along the way. And everything gets exactly where it's supposed to be. And we don't have to figure it all out. And what a relief it is that we don't have to figure this thing out. We just have to take our steps and say yes. I want to now kind of transition back to what Hailey was talking about, which was our time in the mountains and with Doug. And I shared this story with a few people yesterday because I like real stories. I like real life because we could easily sugarcoat everything and stand up here and just tell everybody, oh, this place is perfect and everything works perfectly and everyone should do this, but that's not real. The truth is it's hard and we have to grow through things. And so one of the things Hailey alluded to was that for the first time we had seen Doug vulnerable with us and showing that he was having to work through things. He's our mountain sage. He's perfect. I still feel that way. Nothing changed. And yet he was open enough with us to show us the struggles he was going through and the things he was working on. And about halfway into our trip, a very interesting thing happened. We were at Doug's campsite, and he got a phone call. He does have a little flip phone. It's not a smartphone. It's a flip phone. I don't think he actually sends texts, but I've texted him a couple times, and I think he gets them, but he's never responded. But he gets a phone call from the campground, and he lives up in the hill along the river outside of the campground, and there's a bear in the campground that's been treed. And so we go down, so he goes down, he's like, I'll be back in 15 minutes. You guys can just relax and hang out. And, you know, after about 2 minutes, we were like, we should really go down there too. And so we went down to the campground and walked right up on the scene as it was unfolding. And it was like a dream, watching it unfold. What was happening was humans were being humans at the base of this tree. And they had 2 hunting dogs that were at the trunk of the tree just howling. And they had a bear treed. And the energy was intense, and there was a kid with a paintball gun lighting this bear up, and in their mind, trying to get the bear out of the tree. And I'm thinking, where the heck is Doug? Doug has been cultivating the consciousness in this valley for over 20 years, that nature, bears, life are not separate from us. They are one with us. And here these people are doing just an unthinkable thing. And there's campers, us, watching this happen unfold right in front of us, thinking, how can this be? Why would the bear come out of the tree if there's 2 dogs at the base of the tree yelling at it? Well, it got worse in that moment. And like I said, I'm just going to tell a real story. It got worse, and the bear started to come down, and the other older guy who was there had a shotgun, and he shot the bear. And it was devastating because we had just been talking about Doug. The bears are Doug's best friends. And he told us the bears are completely clear in themselves. There is no blockages. So when you sit with a bear, and when a bear walks up to you, it knows your thoughts before you even know what you're thinking. Because it's totally clear. There's nothing to get in the way. So when you just are peaceful in yourself, what do you think that bear feels? Peace. Bears aren't mean. They're not trying to hurt us. He's been cultivating that for 20 years, and this happened, and there was Doug, and he watched the whole thing, and I could not believe what happened before my eyes. As the bear fell out of the tree and went across the river, and we weren't sure what happened at that point, and there's a state of shock amongst everyone who watched it, a family walked up behind us, and the dad said, what just happened? And I couldn't say anything. I was totally locked up. Said, the bear. And there was a 7 or 8 year old boy, and he said, they shot the bear? And he could not understand what just happened. And in that moment, I realized that was the voice of God talking. The voice of God, through the mouth of a child, was telling us that was wrong. And we need to be willing to know when we've done wrong. We can't just say, it's okay, this is part of life. We need to know when these things happen that there's a purpose, that this is not okay. I started reflecting on that for the next 3, 4, 5 days. Why did this happen? What is going on? And what I felt in all that testosterone and all that shooting my guns, all that consciousness, what is it that caused that? And I just arrived at, they were afraid. It was fear that caused the whole situation to happen. Did they know that? No. They were angry at the bear. They felt justified in what they did. And I started looking at the world again. And when you're on the mountain and you're at 8,000 feet and you start to see what's going on in the world, it can be a scary thing to tune into. Because when we dropped back down in that valley and we saw thousands and thousands of acres burned to the ground, still fires raging right now, we got work to do, guys. This is not okay. What is going on? Fear is what's going on. We've got to look into our own lives right now and figure out where those seeds of fear are at and extract them and burn them up, because they have no place in us anymore. And what we have to do is another story from Doug. We have to create a bubble of joy, a bubble of God's consciousness that is in us and around us all the time. And I want to share one Doug story that happened last year. And it's when the fires were moving up the mountain, 7,000 feet in the Sierras, everything is burning, and the whole mountain gets evacuated except for Doug. And he would not leave. There was no fear in him. He would not leave. And he worked tirelessly day after day to try to save Mono Hot Springs, which is our Eden, Hailey and my Eden. From the first moment we stepped there, it's pristine nature. The thought of it burning down just about takes my heart out of me. But Doug stayed, and he did not leave. And for days he worked on this and was told there'll be no support. All the firefighters are tied up in the towns and down in the valley. They can't come. And then suddenly it all shifted. The wind started to blow. That fire started to pick up steam. And 100 firefighters showed up. And they worked for 3 days. And they were able to save Mono Hot Springs. And Doug told us we put a bubble of joy around the hot spring. And we walked to the edges of it. Everything is burned. But at the hot springs themselves, it did not burn. And he said for 3 days they worked and then played in the springs. And then they worked and then they played. And they worked and they played. And he said at no point with the 100 firefighters that were up there did he sense any fear at any point from a single one of them. And they could see the fire right there. And they could see what was coming. And there was no way off. You know, they're going to be trapped on the mountain with the fire. And he said the bubble of joy is really what saved them. Isn't that interesting? The world sucks right now. And coming from California and seeing what's going on, it is a huge opportunity for us to wake up. We cannot continue to just accept it for what it is. We have to be the change that we need to see in it right now. And I really, truly believe that That we don't have the time we think we do. We don't have the time to waller in our bedrooms anymore. It's time to wake up and become the solution. And the solution is that we live in the bubble of joy with each other, that we affirm that, and we hold that out as the actual truth. We can watch the news every day of the week and think we know everything going on. That's not the truth. The truth is the bubble of joy that we always have access to. So I just want to sow that seed with this life's test theme. The tests are real, but we can't wallow in them. We've got to pick up that higher thread and hold on to the thread of faith in our life and know that if we do the right things, everything is going to work out. We can't get swallowed into this polarization of consciousness that's happening. We have the choice to expand or contract. The whole world is disintegrating. That's the reality of material life on this planet, is disintegration. But the reality of yoga is integration. And so when we integrate each aspect of our life into a whole with each other, with nature, with life, we set a template that can actually change the whole world. And what we saw on the mountain was that everybody we talked to who was up there was looking for answers, because you can't find them in Fresno. Well, if you're sitting in Fresno and you look in here, you can. But it's very hard to find them in the world. We have to look within. So that's my wish for all of us, is that we just take what is going to be happening now, what is happening, the reality of this world, and we use that as the prod to wake up, to choose community as a consciousness, to choose brotherhood as a way of life, and to start showing each other by the living example that it can exist, that it is real. And I truly believe that that template, wherever it exists, is the way shower for the whole future of humanity. Because when everything burns down, what do we have left? We've got our relationships to each other, to life, to God. So let's just value those now. Let's make those the priority now, and not wait for everything to fall apart. So God bless everyone. Thank you for being here and being part of the solution. Jai Guru. Anybody know what happens next? Music. Do we do offertory now? After. Cool.
Up again.